What's up, everyone? It's the Autistic Scyther here, and, well, when it comes down to it, I actually like a lot of things, and one of the more interesting things I've recently begun to like is Fire Emblem Heroes. Wait, before you click off, let me explain. For those that don't know, Fire Emblem is one of my autistic special interests, and honestly, when it comes down to it, kind of means I get interest in Fire Emblem Heroes, at least at some point. And naturally, while I'm not that good with most of the battle aspects of the game, one thing is simple: I do like the art, a lot of the art from Fire Emblem Heroes. So, at least it kind of makes sense that I would at least make this sort of list. So, in this case, it's time to count down my top 10 best Fire Emblem Heroes arts. Now, the only thing is, these are all my opinions, so everyone has their own opinion about what their favorite art is. And that's fine, but just know that these are what I think are the best Fire Emblem Heroes arts. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Starting off first at number 10, we have Base Namie. Alright. When a lot of people think of Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones, everyone always thinks of it as one of the easiest Fire Emblem games in the entire series. And this is naturally due to the fact that this is one of the shortest Fire Emblem games in the series, and the Tower of Volney kinda makes grinding units a non-issue. However, that being said, there are a lot of characters. The reason why I like Fire Emblem Sacred Stones is because a lot of the characters are kind of interesting. One such character is Namie, which, when you expect it, I'm gonna like Namie because she's an archer, and I like early game archers. But even with that, when she first made an appearance, she's basically seen as timid and always ends up bursting into tears without any provocation. However, as time goes on, she becomes a lot more confident and sure of herself. And especially when you consider when she learned how to use a bow, yeah, it kind of makes sense. That being said, when she was introduced in Fire Emblem Heroes, yeah, kind of made sense that Namie, the art for her base ult really does say a lot. And while Combs basically looks like most of the other previous Steves and heroes like Matthew and Julian, Namie's kind of brings her more kinder and timid side to herself, but eventually that she's seen in the beginning of the game. But she also has a bit of her confidence as you get further into the game, which honestly really works when you think about it. Plus, her art basically allowed me to eventually realize that she's not wearing a dress, which really says a lot considering the GBA sprites for female archers has them in a dress. So, yeah, at least there's something in terms of clarification involving that. Moving on next at number 9, we have Base Yunaka and Holiday Yunaka. Alright. For those that don't know, one of my favorite units from Fire Emblem Engage is Yunaka. And naturally, this is due to her peppy attitude and her more or optimistic outlook on life. Which really does say a lot, but it also belies the fact that underneath it, she's naturally all business to the point of being fairly intimidating, to the point that it shows a bit of her past as an assassin just eking through into her character, which can be a real surprise if you don't know that from the beginning, as honestly it was a surprise for me. But that being said, that makes her just much more of an interesting character, since she's basically just living a double life. Just not only being a normal girl, but also wrestling with her past as a spy or an assassin. And naturally, consider how this is the only tie that's on this list. Yeah, both her base ult and holiday ult really show that same sort of feeling. With the base ult just being Yunaka as a whole. Plus, honestly, as much as I have to point it out, there is a cat in the base art that, honestly, I gotta admit, the fact that they added a cat just to add into her personality really just tickles me. And I'm a cat person. However, in terms of her holiday art, yeah, the art for her holiday ult just keeps to the more whimsicality of the holiday season, to the point that it shows that she's willing to enjoy the holiday season and fully embrace the holiday spirit. But when something threatens her good times, she's basically not gonna let it do so for long. And that she means business no matter what. And honestly, yeah. That being said, either way, Yunaka has some of the best art. Minus the ninja ult, because I don't know why they made her a bow unit. Just makes no sense. Moving on next at number 8, we have Legendary Diamant. Speaking of Engage, yeah, as much as I like Alchrist, in terms of the Brodia brothers, as much as I'm basically more or less like Alchrist, due to him being an archer, as well as him just trying to find his niche, even though he feels like he doesn't live up to his brother's lofty expectations. When we're introduced to Diamant, we see a guy with a kind of a cool demeanor. I mean, he's intimidating, but he's basically a down-to-earth guy. Even though he eventually ends up getting saddled with the responsibility of leading Brodia to a more peaceful age, especially after his father, King Morian, ends up dying, courtesy of King Hyacinth. And in all fairness, it really does fit him to a T. As this is a guy who's more or less showing himself to be a more personable ruler, but still stern when it counts. And naturally, this is perfectly showing with most of Diamant's ults in Fire Emblem Heroes. The art showing his kind of strength that Brodia showcases. That being said, honestly, when it comes to his legendary ult, yeah, I have to point this one out. This works the most, since it definitely shows the kind of strength that is only associated more so with Diamant himself. also brings to mind a little bit of his father, King Morian. And honestly, this is one of the most awesome alts that I've ever seen in my life. And the fact that I got him almost instantly in terms of that banner, yeah, I was crowing about it so much. Yeah, I get excited over a lot of things. Yeah. Moving on next at number 7, we have Base Tinny. Yeah. While I haven't finished playing through Genealogy of the Holy War, namely because of the long maps, honestly, I like a lot of characters from Genealogy. And naturally, one of my favorites is Tiltu, who, despite her noble upbringing, she more or less is able to just act casually no matter what, almost like a normal girl. And honestly, that's enjoyable, to say the least. That being said, there's also her daughter Tinny, who is kind of the opposite, but is still enjoyable no matter what, since when we first get introduced to Tinny, she's more or less timid and unwilling to fight back against anything that she's ordered to do, namely because she witnessed her mother get tortured by Queen Hilda, her aunt Queen Hilda, while her Uncle Bloom just sat back and did nothing. And even after joining Selev's army, while she was still timid, she ends up becoming a little bit more assertive and willing to fight for what she believes is right. And actually, when I ended up summoning her base alt, honestly, I just was able to notice how well her art showed that. As it showed a bit of her timid self from the start, but also after being able to use her whenever she got a crit, honestly, it's her crit art that really shows her assertiveness, that honestly brings to mind just someone willing to come into her own and prove her worth to everyone out there. And honestly, I admit this is definitely me in a nutshell, as I've been trying to prove my worth to everyone no matter what. So, I feel that. Really do. Moving on next at number 6, we have Young Robin. Yeah. Out of 13 different alts, I had to choose young female Robin. Granted, don't get me wrong, young male Robins is kind of an interesting one since it shows just male Robin as a boy. But honestly, I kind of prefer young female Robin in her duo with Chrom. And naturally, when it comes to the young alts basically showing what many different Fire Emblem characters were like as kids, it honestly makes sense with both young female Robin and Chrom, because it basically shows what they would essentially be when they eventually got older, as seen in Fire Emblem Awakening. With young female Robin basically still showing that she's a bit of a bookworm, even as a kid, as much as she was as an adult. But it also shows Chrom, who wants to become a great hero like his father, and we eventually get to see that at the beginning of Fire Emblem Awakening and all throughout Fire Emblem Awakening. Which, honestly, this is when it comes down to the Young Awakening banner, a lot of them were still pretty solid. So, yeah, really did have that nice feeling. Plus, there's a Fire Emblem Awakening fanfiction that had Chrom and female Robin meeting each other as kids, so kind of brought that to mind, so yeah. I really like that fanfiction. There's a lot. This will be continued in part 2.